Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Expanded You Podcast. Today we have my dear friend Sally Fu here sharing her own journey of how she was raised in an Asian family, how she was being self-conscious and people-pleasing growing up and being compared to all her siblings, and really all that conditioning of us growing up in that kind of environment teaches us to hold ourselves back, to feel self-conscious when we want to speak up and not feel comfortable in our own skin. And so in this episode, Sally shared her journey of how she broke out of her shell, not feeling self-conscious or less self-conscious, and really being her authentic self to speak up for herself and being silly and being playful, the Sally that she always wanted to be. And so super excited to share her story with you. And if you're brand new to this podcast, basically this podcast is to share all our real life stories to show you what's possible for you, to show you how you can live in your most authentic self and to feel free to speak up, to feel free to not have the regret of holding yourself back. So if you're new to this podcast, definitely subscribe to hear more content like this. And I'm super excited to share this episode with you. So here is Sally Fu. So welcome everybody back to another episode of the Expanded You Podcast. Today I have a super special guest, Sally Fu, my dear friend that I met actually not too long ago, maybe 2 months ago in Atlanta at an event with Jen Gottlieb. And it was a Build Your Brand Life event. And I saw her actually before the meeting. We had a lot of Zoom calls and I marked her on the Zoom. I'm like, this girl I have to meet at the event. It turned out to be the most amazing friendship. So I'm super excited to have you here, Sally. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much, Suzanne. It's such an honor to be invited on your podcast. And I would say I didn't really pay much attention to all the Zoom calls before the event. So I didn't even saw your name there. Yeah, but meeting you at Build Your Brand Live was, I would say, one of the best thing ever because you're so giving, so generous.
Thank you. And I want to say this is true because when you were on the Zoom, you actually won the semifinalists for the speaking challenge that we had at the event. And that's why I noticed you. And I didn't speak during the Zoom call. So it was normal that you didn't notice me at all. And then when I met you at the event in person, holy cow, I remember the one that really made me feel connected to you was we were in front of the stage and we were just playing around getting our live videos done. And you had the microphone that we were just playing around and you were just so funny and you were being such your true authentic self. You were like, just let me take a picture of you, you stay there, and then you were just guiding us in the whole photo shoot basically. And I just love your spirit that way and your energy. I'm like, this girl's fun and she's crazy and I want to get to know her more.
That is hilarious.
And that's where we build our friendship from there.
I remember at that time that was our second day knowing each other and I just feel more comfortable. I think we had a few talks and then we had a dinner together. And I just felt more myself. I felt more accepted.
And I invited you. We were just talking about this before we started the recording. And I really want to dive into your story a little bit more, Sally, about how you came to be about and finding your true authentic self that way, to be comfortable in your own skin. Because I believe that not all Asians feel that way. So I want to hear a little bit more about your story.
Yeah, I think let me start from the beginning where how all of this mindset and beliefs came about. I was born in Vietnam and our family is Chinese immigrants. So we get two cultures mixed together. My grandpa spoke French because he was working for the French government before the Vietnam War. So all of these different beliefs were built into our family. And when I was born, so I'm the second child of the whole generation. So my father is the first child. And my sister is the first kid, and then I'm the second one. And obviously, when the first kid came, everybody is all over her, right, my sister? And I know that she was really loved. And when I came into this world, I had a lot of criticism straight from the beginning. I remember my aunts and my mom would tell me that I didn't look like a girl. I looked like a boy. And I had like curly, wavy bangs, didn't have much hair. So I was criticized and compared to my sister from the start. She was this perfect doll with a lot of hair being born and her skin was nice and whatnot. And I remember when I was like, I think like 3 or 4 years old, whenever I cry, it was out of rage out of wanting attention. And I would like scratch my face and hurt myself just to get that attention. So I didn't think much of it until in my adulthood, how I was always seeking for validation and attention when I work or in parties or even in my family life. And so I have two younger brothers after that. They
Wow.
were pretty close to my age. Now, in Vietnam, academic is so important, but school system, in my memories, were like living hell because your teachers are actually allowed to like spank you or punish you harshly when you don't write well enough or when you get a certain number of questions wrong in your math. It was like hellish. Nowadays, when I have nightmare, it is me going back to school in Vietnam. In my dreams, I would be like, wait, why am I here again? I thought I'm in America.
Wow.
Yeah. So this is one of the traumas that I had to learn to forgive and move on with life. So going back to that story, I remember whenever people said no to me, when my teacher or my parents would tell me no, it felt like a series of punishment is going to happen. As an adult, whenever I feel rejected or somebody say no to me, especially when my man say no to me, I have all of this, I'm not good enough, I'm not deserving enough, and I'm not worthy enough sort of beliefs that was built since childhood. And obviously we don't remember any of that and or where it came from, right? Until we sit down and really debrief and be honest to ourselves. Why do I feel this way? And what was the root cause of me having all of these reactions? My body was reacting because it remembers, but my mind, because of my defense mechanism, it just kind of erased that memory, push it on the side, right? Until I learned how to access that memory and retell the story that I told myself, why I had
Yeah.
those beliefs, and it wasn't about me. And slowly I was kind of able to break away from all those beliefs. It wasn't easy because it was generations. It wasn't from just from me. It was from my mom. She, even till today, has the belief that she's not good enough. She's constantly trying to validate herself through her siblings' approval.
Yeah. 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 It's so awesome. I want to dive a little deeper into how you got to understand all these things for yourself because I don't think it's natural for us to even say, oh, the way that I'm reacting this way is related to my childhood, right? So tell us about how your journey of how you learn about all these things.
I remember when I was little, I was a very shy and timid girl. In Vietnam, it's a busy city. I lived in Saigon, and all I wanted to do was stay at home, read my books. And even though it was hot, I was sweating. I would not want to go out. I would just stay in the room and read my books because I was worried about what people were going to think about me. And if they were going to make me do something I didn't want to do and I couldn't say no, right? People
Wow.
pleasing. Now, we moved to the US when I was 12. And I remember that was like the best thing that happened to me because there's so much land to run around. And being outside was like amazing. We couldn't see grass in Saigon or birds or little animals. And later on, I find out that I love all of that. I love the nature. Whenever there was a party in our house, and you know how those Asian parties, your whole relatives came, 50, 60 something people, and a whole feast going on. And all the aunts and uncles just came to you like, hey, how you doing? Blah, blah, blah. And you have no idea what to say to them, right? Because you're
Yep.
also worried
Yep.
about judgment because you know the next thing that will come up of the mouth is, how
Yes.
come you're not doing this? Why are you like this?
Yep.
Yep. So I often result in staying in my room and playing video games. And my mom would just come through the door and be like, what are you doing? We have guests. You got to come down and greet our guests. And I remember like last Saturday, I was going through the same thing. I didn't want to go down to the living room where our guests are. My baby niece was having the 1 month celebration, and I was flashback to my childhood. So I was very timid, and if I were to walk in front of an adult, I would be like trying to not make any noise so they won't notice me. So they won't talk to me, right? That was me growing up. Now, what really changed was when I was 19 going to college. I think going to college for me was one of the most wonderful things because now I get to be in a new environment and I make new friends. And all the people that knew me back in high school, don't know who I am now. So I got to craft this new character. I felt like
Wow.
I was taking 4 classes: anatomy, physiology, psychology, and chemistry all together. Don't do that. Crazy. I had to drop out of anatomy, but I spent most of my time being in the student center playing pool and ping pong, and I learned like new skills, meet different people from different diversity. And I feel like, wow, look at my friends who are from Korea. They are so free. They don't speak the way that I do. Well, at least that's my belief is I don't think they were self-conscious as much as I was. Right. And
Yeah.
seeing them being able to just be themselves, I really start to question, can I just be myself as well? Do I
Mhm.
have to always behave like a good girl, like what we were taught to do when we were young.
Yep.
And the question that I really had to ask myself was, why am I Sally? Why am I having this experience as Sally Fu? And why is that man standing in the corner of the street asking for food experience his reality? Why am I not
Wow.
experiencing that reality? So I was consciously making, I guess, being really aware of where I am in life and why am I
Wow.
having this consciousness.
Holy cow.
Yeah, I was like 18 at that time, and I had to ask myself, what is next after I graduate high school? Do I want to go get a job, go to college, get good grades, get a job, work for 45 years, and then retire? Is that all life can offer
Yeah.
me? I think asking the right question is one of the first steps to really finding out the right answer.
Wow. Wait, can we backtrack a little bit? Because I want to find out what prompted you to even ask these questions.
Mm. What prompted me first was the decision I had to make after high school. Like, do I want to go to
Mm,
college? Do I want to work?
yeah.
Is there another
Yeah.
option? And my mom ran a nail salon at that time, and I was helping her out at the age of, I think like 18, 16, I can't remember. And I remember times where it was supposed to be my day off, and she asked me to go work, and I was mad. At that time, I would rather pursue a career that would pays me way less so then I can get away from my mom's nail salon.
Mm, oh,
Yeah.
wow.
So
Okay.
that was those were the decisions I had to make. Go to college, work for my mom, or get a nursing assistant certification and go work there and make way less.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what prompted you to ask these questions of what do you really want to do? What is Sally Fu about? Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. And I think because of that question, it makes me become really observant of the people that I start to meet. Like, oh, let's look at that teller working at the bank. Do I want to be like
Mm.
her? Or do I want to be like this man, a chef working at a restaurant? Things like that.
So you started looking for models basically of what kind of person you want to be, and you started crafting that persona that you want to be, right?
Definitely. And I think a lot of probably you and I, we grew up watching like Disney princesses. I don't know if you
Mhm.
did,
Yeah.
but I have.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Huge Disney fan.
Right, Disney princesses. And in the back of my head, I thought I would get married and have kids. We're going to buy a house and we're going to live happily ever after.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So subconsciously, I was also looking for something like that. And I actually was
Mm.
with my first husband. We got married at the age of 18. Now, I was a rebel.
Oh.
I got married without my parents knowing. Yeah. I got married in San Diego, California. So obviously, nobody knew.
Wow.
And I thought I would be with this man and build a family. But later on, I guess my reality was like all crumbled down. But yeah, those were the
Wow.
things that prompted my questioning about life.
Wow. So how did you get to learn all these things for yourself? Like how did you get into the self-development journey where you just learn about to recognize these patterns in you? Because it's something that must have been learned.
Yeah, I actually got into the financial industry and I had to do huge personal development because I was 19 and I was serving clients in their 40s and 50s, and my vocabulary was very limited at that time. And the way I was behaving was very just innocent and childlike. So I had to read books from Tony Robbins and who else? There was so many. I couldn't remember. Oh, Rich Dad Poor Dad, right? Think and Grow Rich. So Napoleon Hill's books, I had like a whole library of that, and I have the Think and Grow Rich audio book on repeat because I want to learn more and become more. You probably know that all of these books really prompt you to ask the question and get you to really think about your life. I feel like not a lot of people have this habits where they learn something and they apply right away. For me, the fastest way for me to learn is I apply right away. I hear something,
Mm.
oh, that sounds good. Let's do it. And then I will
Mm.
make the decision if it works for me or not.
We're just talking about how Michael, your soulmate, was basically calling out on your bullshit, and then the problem is in you, and you were having that humility to look inside yourself to really recognize that for yourself. So, how did you even do that? Like, because that takes courage.
Yeah, I was talking about kickboxing. It really started from me pushing myself physically. And when I was able to push over my limits and I still was okay, I survived. I was able to use that physical strength for my mental clarity. And when Michael was actually stepping on his foot and tell me that, hey, girl, you're actually the problem. You might want to take a look at that. And to me, at that time, my ego was so huge that at first I didn't accept it. However, when I sat by myself and I actually asked those questions, could he be right? Or was he trying to manipulate me? And with those questions, I actually was able to feel that Michael tell me these things because he loves me. And I believe
Mm.
when you have humility and when you step into your authenticity, and this is what I just realized recently, the reason why I was able to just accept that I was the problem and eventually step into my authentic self is because I had the realization that no matter who I become and who I am now, somebody is always going to love me. And that's when
Mm.
I realized that when Michael did that action, he actually cared about me. He wasn't just in my life to get something out of it. And because of my past relationship, I have some trust issues and I gave him a lot of crap in the relationship. But when I realized that, oh my gosh, I don't have to live up to this facade and somebody will still love me. And obviously, our
Wow.
parents will always love us. But I think as we become adult, we seek that acceptance and love from outside. So
Yeah.
that's when I realized that I could just be me.
That's huge. And he gave you that safe space basically for the true Sally to come out. And I totally understand that because growing up in the Asian families, and especially with so many relatives, they tend to be quite judgmental. It's like, why? Oh, you gain weight, you look fatter, or your skin is horrible, and they tell it to you in your face, and then that's the conditioning that we learn to like hide ourselves and feeling like we're not enough, and so that's huge that Michael gave you that safe space for the true authentic Sally to come out. And so now comparing the two versions, right? The old Sally that was a people pleaser, and then now the more authentic you, where do you see the differences and how do you feel now?
Yeah, a huge, huge difference. I think, first of all, I have always been the rebel, but I didn't want to speak up. I didn't want the attention on myself back then. But once I found my authentic voice and accept that the person who I truly am is still that playful Sally when I was like 5 or 7 years old. I have sadly pushed her down and just kind of left her in a dark room all by herself for all these years. And when Michael, he had actually created this safe space for me this whole time in the beginning of our relationship. We were friends for 4 years before we actually started dating. But this whole time, he was very authentic to me. But I felt like he would only like me if I'm this. And when I
Mm,
was able to slowly show a little bit part of me, I started with just letting my inner child come out more to play
mm,
instead of being
yeah.
uptight about everything and feeling like when things don't go my way, I would throw a tantrum, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I let the little Sally come out and be like, hey, things are messy. Let's just roll in the dirt with it. Roll it. It's raining. It's muddy. Let's roll in it. Instead of like complaining about everything. Oh my gosh, it's dirty. So playfulness has come out. And because playfulness come out, my partner was able to see me as, oh, I can tell jokes with her and we're able to connect more
Mm,
through just comedy. So
oh.
That's one thing. Another thing is I felt like I didn't need anybody else's approval to do what I want to do. And certain part of me still try to seek other people's opinion to see where I could improve, but I didn't need them to be okay for me to start doing something.
Yeah. You hit a major point is that self-consciousness of even speaking up, that self-consciousness before of even wanting to be playful and be a little silly, right? And then now all that's coming out in such an authentic way. And I think that's what, going back to what we were talking about earlier, that's what I saw when we were in front of that stage at the event. And then Sally was playing with the mic and then telling people how to pose and how to take pictures and all that. And just to recognize that, and I want to point that out because so many times we see people kind of like what you were talking about, like those Korean friends that you were with or those people that you saw in university that you're like, oh, they're not self-conscious as I would feel inside, and you were starting to observe. And I want to point that out as it actually can come with a lot of work inside of all of us before we can get to that point. And because it's not going back into the comparisonitis, comparing yourself to other people is like, oh, that person is so much cooler than I am. And then you start to shove yourself even more down into the black hole. It's like seeing Sally's example of how she did that and discover herself and brought herself out that way is actually doable. And we can all learn to do that. So that's a beautiful, beautiful story that you share with us of how you basically came out to be your true playful self that you were feeling when you were a child.
Yeah, thank you. And I think as women, a lot of times we compete with other women. We don't want to say
Yeah.
it, but we always compare like, oh, she's prettier than me. Her body look nicer. More people like her. So we always have this competition going on silently and nobody
Yeah.
knows about it. And I would have to agree that I was one of those where if I see some woman doing really good and my competitiveness come out and be like, I gotta do better, I gotta be better. I think that's good until you start to compare too much and it becomes really toxic.
Yeah.
Yeah. You start to step away from your authenticity instead of
Mm-hmm.
coming into, oh, Suzanne is doing this. She's great at it. What can I learn from her? Right? Instead of,
Mm.
oh my gosh, she's so good at this. I need to be better than her.
Yeah, that's so true. That's such a good contrast of the intention. And the intention is maybe you're going to adopt some people's behavior that you admire in them, but the intention behind it is not coming from a competing point of view, but something that you admire in them and say, hey, I want to adopt more of that like them, instead of comparing yourself where you feel like you're not enough. And I feel like that's what we've all been feeling, but we just didn't know how to put the words into it. It's like it's all coming from the fact that even you growing up, like with your sisters being compared all the time that way, it makes us feel like we're not enough and we want to be better like the other person. Whereas we all have so much inside of us and we're all such unique in our own way. And I want to really put this message out there is like we want to put out our own uniqueness to the world, because you feel like we're always drawn to the people who are the most authentic online or who speaks up their mind. And there's a reason we're drawn to them, because they're living in their authenticity. And we all can get to that point where we feel comfortable and safe in our own authentic self. So thank you, Sally, for sharing all that, your whole journey with us. And you truly shine today being your authentic self and your authentic voice. So thank you for being the example to show us what's really possible for all of us. So thank you so much, Sally, for coming on the show today. It's always been so much fun. So thank you guys for joining us in another episode, and we will see you at the next one. Bye.